Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the weekly show of What is School For? My name is I'm the CEO of Classroom Without Walls. I'm the host of this weekly live streaming show. You can also listen to us on the traditional audio-only podcast. Just search What is School For? And you can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and all the other places. On this show, I interview leading education professionals, teachers, business leaders, parents, students to come here to discuss, debate, and disrupt education. Our goal is to future-proof the next generation. And today, I have my dear friend, longtime friend, Darren Horne on the show to talk about emotional resilience and how we can help our children level up. And for those of you who don't know who is Darren, he is a leadership development strategist, an author, and he has just published a book on this topic. So I can't wait to dive more into the book. He's also a speaker and also a teacher, which is my formal career. And Darren, actually, we connected a few years ago through Snapchat. And he came to my show when I just launched my very first live streaming show. Now this is my third live streaming show. And we were actually talking about how he was using Snapchat in the classroom to facilitate teaching and learning. So we are also going to talk a little bit more about social media because I know many parents are really concerned about social media. I'm the same. So how can we, use social media for good and so many other good stuff? And as always, we are live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Periscope, on Twitch. And you are live with us right now. Let me know in the comment section where you guys are joining us live from, social media-wise and geographically speaking. And also a big shout out to StreamYard, which is my favorite third-party tool to go live. Over the last 4 years, I have tried so many different tools to go live on social media. StreamYard is my personal favorite. So if you are interested, in the comment section, there is a link to StreamYard, and you can use my discount code to check out StreamYard 14 days for free. And really exciting. Yeah. Without any further ado, let's welcome my guest of honor, my dear friend Darren on the show. So welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. I'm also obviously, I'm a parent as well, and I'm a student. I'm always a student. I'm always doing a new course. So I hit quite a lot of your criteria.
Yeah, totally. That's why you have on the show, right? Second time. So you have such a, even though you are teaching media, but you have such a passion for mental health, emotional intelligence, kind of raising our children in a more holistic manner. So what's your story? What inspired you to be interested in this topic?
Yeah, I obviously, as educators, we come across mental health in our students quite a lot. In the early part of my career, you would just pass it on to someone else. You would say, hey, go see the progress coach, student services, the counselor, whatever. But then I had a daughter, and very soon afterwards, I got diagnosed with postnatal depression, which I think in America is called postpartum depression. And I had a really tough year. And it was also sitting on undiagnosed anxiety and depression, I suppose, because I just figured that life was suffering. I just figured we all were kind of in the grind. And during my recovery, I suddenly started to have happy days. I was like, hold on, we can live our lives and actually feel genuine happy, not just like momentary excitement over the new TV show. And I really exploded with empathy for my own students as well, because I realized watching my daughter grow up that 1-year-old, 2-year-olds, all these kids were happy. They laughed all the time. They didn't care what they looked like, and they never gave up. Like never once as a teenager crawled into the room because he didn't learn or she didn't learn how to walk. Like they would have stood up and fallen over so many times and never quit. And yet something happens through education and through kind of going through the teenage years where they start to question themselves, they get scared of failure, and it's just not acceptable. So because I'd gone through this journey on my own and developed some skills, I just started sharing them with my own students and then embedding them into that. And because I'm a media lecturer as well, I can see that the media is also playing its part in doing this to them. Like it's not accidental that they don't like the way they look. that was programmed into them. And I got furious that a subject that I love was weaponized against us. And I really started to take that to heart.
Wow, that's such a great way to describe it. I love how you said weaponized, right? Like, I still remember growing up watching a commercial, right? If you don't like your face, don't like your body, there's like, right? They already suggested, especially for female students, right? They suggested, and I think more so also for men, like an ideal way to look, to perform, and how much money, all those things. So I definitely agree. So you also mentioned, Darren, that you also had depression yourself. So if you don't mind sharing, like, how did you come out of that state?
So in film, there's, in all stories all around the world, even with civilizations that have never met, there's a thing called the hero's journey, and it's a structure of stories, and it builds on Jung and the archetypes in our mind. So I love that. I've run a cinema, I've taught film, I've made films. That narrative structure is within me as a kind of coaching tool. And what happens when in life and in movies is you're in the ordinary world and you get a call to adventure, and you refuse a call because it's scary. So my call to adventure was like, you've got depression, you need to go fight depression. And I was like, no, like, that's way too scary. I'm going to stay under this quilt and in the bed. This is my happy place. I'm going to stay here, much more comfortable. But in the movies, what they do is they get a mentor. They get Dumbledore or Gandalf, and he gives you a gift. It could be a lightsaber, but in real life, it's advice, it's medicine from the doctor, it's going on medication. And then you surround yourself with allies, your Hermione's, your Han Solos, but in my case, my wife, family, and you step out of your comfort zone, and you're like, this is going to suck, but I've got this network around me. I romanticized it. I'm the hero of my own journey. I started thinking about what armor I wear, how am I going to present myself, what's my kind of Batman armor, and making sure you've got little things like making sure you've got clean clothes, you're looking after yourself, shaving if you do that. And then I went on the quest, and I understood I've got to overcome minor bad guys, minor threshold guardians are called, like stormtroopers or wolves. You get to the cave, the dragon is there. The dragon is depression. And in Joseph Campbell says, the thing you seek most in life is behind your greatest fear. And I treat it with that level of respect. Like, depression to me is a freaking dragon, and I never forget that it's there. And so I learned every single tool I could. I became a neurolinguistic programming practitioner. I did cognitive behavior therapy. I did emotional freedom technique. I studied stoicism. I went meditation. I was just like, this dragon's not taking me down. And even now, like, I'm reading about quantum physics because that's what makes me really curious. But overall, all of these things that I did, and changed my diet. I went on a ketogenic way of diet. Like, I really went after it. I felt like I was Batman and depression was the Joker. And whenever I thought of it, I was like, right, battle time, let's go get it. But what I really did is just weaponize my imagination. I realized that depression and anxiety are not the reality. It's just my thoughts. And when I say in my imagination, I don't mean that they don't exist. Like, if I think something happens to my daughter, it will have an impact on my body and I will cry. And I will get upset. If I think about food, I will salivate. If I think about anxious thoughts, I will become anxious. If I think about depressed thoughts, I will become depressed. So I had to start weaponizing my imagination and putting anchors all in around me, even like this wolf necklace I wear, to make sure that I'm guiding my thoughts in a positive place. And you can literally do that. It's like one thing I do, which I've seen recommended by counselors, is I have two big, like, Game of Thrones wolves that walk next to me when I feel weak. So if I'm worried, I just imagine. And honestly, if you've got two wolves walking behind you, you feel strong. And then I understood the mind-body connect. Like, if I hold my body strong, my mind tends to respond. If I hold my body low, my mind tends to respond. So there's a lot I could say about it, but I really like that phrase, weaponize my imagination. And that's probably the best tool that I had to overcome it, or to manage it.
That is so powerful, because I remember, quantum physics and lots of like people in law of attraction, they're talking about when our imagination, like our brain, cannot really tell the difference between the things that were imagined versus things that are actually like happening in real life. So right now, if we ask everyone to imagine a lemon, we will feel like, like sour, our mouth, things like that. It is so true. It is so true. Like fear, imagining something that is not even happening. But in the future, now I run my business, I know that so well, right? What if doing big launch? What if nobody's purchasing my courses? So I so agree. So would you say that it's not one particular tool or book or technique that really helped you, but kind of all of them in combination really helped you?
Yeah, and I find it kind of comes down to branding. That I think a lot of what I learn, I know by another name. So I might go and do something new and I think, oh, I know this is NLP. And it's really broad. Like it even goes into quite, I guess, more spiritual stuff, like, you know, kind of chaos magic or witchcraft. But, you know, if you're doing like, think about witchcraft, and this is, again, language I use with my students. I say, you know, pick whatever term you want. You're an alchemist, you're an illusionist, you're a wizard, you're a mage. Think about that hero's journey. You're going to go off and fight a dragon. We also use this language. Oh, that person's a beast. That person's a witch. Oh, I'm being trolled. We use this language all the time. So if I you know, say a phrase, it's amazing to me that that's just words I'm saying, and yet I can make someone cry. So if you start to, so like in witchcraft, for example, all they're doing is really saying, okay, I want love in my life or whatever. You get a red candle, you put a rune onto it, you write out a spell, which is just a well-formed outcome, really. But most of the time, you're also going to have a wash and clean your house because you're inviting love in. So I think there's it's that process of all things are kind of similar, but they just have different names. So whether it's psychology, cognitive behavior therapy, NLP, you know, witchcraft, mindfulness, meditation, stoicism. You know, I read a book called The Chimp Paradox that I thought was superb. But again, it's similar. Like human beings, we're not new. Like human beings have been talking about life and the meaning of life for hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. And the Stoics and Aristotle and Socrates say very wise things. Epictetus, I think, said, you know, some things you can control, some things you can't. Like, the knowledge is out there. Choose what brand you like, what suits your personality. Like some people think, oh, no, not cognitive behavior therapy, but they'll be really excited about the idea of like forest bathing, like going into a forest and just being mindful. Like find the thing that works for you. This is another thing, going to the hero's journey, is if the path is too clear, you're on the wrong path, because this is your journey. So, and there's a great story, I think it's the Green Knight and the King Arthur. They were going after the Grail. So they split up because it's an individual hero's quest, and they found the thickest part of the forest because they needed to go somewhere no one else had been. And for you to find success, there's plenty of people modeling, there's plenty of people motivating, but it's your journey. You've got to get the dragon on your own. Your mentor's not going to take you all the way there. Luke Skywalker had to face Darth Vader on his own. Harry Potter and Voldemort on your own. It's one-on-one when it comes to mental health.
Yeah, totally. It's like, yeah, one-on-one dieting, right? You choose whatever diet that actually works for you. Is that personal? Just like, you know, learning, I feel like the same way. And I love how you mentioned, right? If this path is so predictable, it means that you're on the wrong path, which reminds me kind of why so many of our, you know, you are a teacher. I was also a teacher. Like so many of our students, at least my students, they actually prefer to stay in school than actually going to real life, because the path at least is so clear, right? So predictable. You have an advisor who tells you year one, take those classes, year two, year three, this is going to happen. Everything's so predictable. They prefer that feeling, perceived feeling of safety. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a perceived feeling. And I changed the way I teach a while ago because I realized I was just making like mini me's. I was like, well, this is what I think. Let me put my knowledge into your head, and then you can be a version of me. No. Totally.
Let's talk about students, because they were really focusing. Most people watch are parents, entrepreneurs, and I feel like parenting is the hardest job. So let's I think among all the things I do, parenting is the hardest job. It's really not to blame anyone, to really try to figure out better ways that we can improve. So I remember a few weeks or a few months ago, I actually interviewed a high schooler in the United States on my show. And I shared with her a latest study conducted by Yale University. So in that study, they surveyed 22,000 high schoolers in the United States and asked them how they were feeling about their high school experience. 70%, more than 70% of them said they felt negative about their high school experience, including, you know, tired, depressed, like a long list of negative emotions. So I asked this high schooler on my show, I was like, how do you feel about this number? Guess what she told me? She said, Dr. I was surprised that the number is not higher.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised and not surprised to hear that. Before we went live, I actually shared with Darren, just the last several months, quite a few of my friends, they lost their children due to mental health issues, which is really, really sad. So I want to ask you, as an educator, why do you think more and more teenagers, especially that age, today's children are really suffering from like depression, anxiety, like mental health issues?
Yeah, it's we're talking about it a lot more. So I think more people are coming forward. There's maybe also some students who use it or say they're anxious or say they've got depression when in fact they just feel a bit down or they just have anxiety. So sometimes I think we can talk about it too much, but at the same time, I'd rather we talk about it too much than not at all. The reasons for this, there's so many. I mean, we can look at one, which is they grew up post 9/11, like their entire world almost has no psychological safety. It's continuous. Be scared of terrorists, be scared of flying, now be scared of COVID. It's just this background fear that they don't trust the world. Add into the fact that we're telling them, they know they're savvy, the climate change in their lifetime is going to absolutely decimate what they think of as their lives or their livelihood or whether food is able to be received. They've also grown up in this speedy technological transformation where they have grown up with social media and they have grown up with advanced kind of computer games and things like that, and they're connecting around the world and they're comparing themselves with other people, and the media's got more sophisticated and getting better with targeted ads and also pinpointing the thing that they feel bad about and themselves because there's so much money to be made in their unhappiness. And then they're thinking, well, do I need to go to uni? But my friend's brother went to uni and he works in that bar. Like, that degree, that education didn't mean he was going to be successful. Mm-hmm. And then they're looking at the education they're getting and they're looking at the modern world and thinking, this doesn't align. In the same way when we were at school and they said, oh, you have to learn maths because you won't always have a calculator with you. I do have a calculator with me all the time. It's on my phone or I've got Siri around. And they're seeing this. So I think we've gone through a massive transformational change because of technology. Colleges and schools are big organizations. It takes them a while to catch up. COVID has actually helped this because we've all had to suddenly jump into the moment. But I think on the whole, the world that the students are seeing, the teenagers are seeing, isn't the same reality that their parents and educators are always living in. And so, and the things that they're passionate about often aren't recognized as being of value. So we have had historically education, cut funding to the arts, cut funding to sports. It might be that their tutor just dismisses TikTok or the idea of being an influencer. And I saw this great thing on TikTok, weirdly, and a woman said, when did your dreams die? And somebody kind of replied and said, when I was 7 years old, I used to love drawing, used to love crayons. And I gave it to my mum and she said, wow, that's amazing. And I smiled. And then later that day, I saw her in the kitchen, put it in the bin. She put it in the bin. So I put my crayons away and I never drew again. And if you think about, and it's that level of comparison, if you think about every person on the planet having this little gift wrapped present inside them, it's their gift. It's the thing that they do that just brings them joy, that's going to enter flow state. So they'll start doing that thing and lunch will pass by, the sun will set, and they're like, where did the day go? That's where we should be trying to get our teenagers to be. And they're going to do that by experimenting with new things. But the thing that they love, they may never come across because of society or their culture, or maybe their big brother said, oh, why are you playing chess? Chess sucks. Or why are you watching that? That sucks. And so they didn't embrace it. Or it's a subject at school that isn't valued. So they don't try singing. They don't decide to do, whatever it is. The arts tend to be not valued, but even if it's woodwork, what is it we do at school? 10 subjects? There's so many other subjects out there that they might love. Sir Ken Robinson talks about this. It's like, what's your element? Why are you on the planet? What makes you you? And the problem is there's so much toxic kind of masculinity and toxic femininity that maybe my thing was ballet, but I would never have done ballet classes as a kid. I know that was a passionate rant, but I get really passionate about it because I think it's that factory orientated thing and not valuing what they really want to do.
Yeah. Oh my God, you mentioned so many good points. And because we actually homeschool our children, so I can really observe my kids when they are in their zone of genius. They both love drawing, and when they are really in the flow, they will, oh my God, where did the time go? They can like spend almost the whole day doing that. And also, I think a bigger issue that you raised is that we need a more holistic system to evaluate our students. I'm trying to find the numbers. Just a few days ago on my other live streaming show, Parenting Corner. Feel free to check it out, everyone, every Tuesday at the same time. I actually just launched that show. And I actually did a training about the latest Adobe study. So it's really shocking. You won't believe the numbers, Darren. I can share with everyone. So in this Adobe study, now I'm talking about evaluating our students. And so they surveyed like hundreds of colleges, college admission officers, parents, students. It's a very big study. So they are trying to discover what actually matters when it comes to college admissions. It's crazy. So the numbers. So a US high school student on average spends 14,000 hours going to school. And if we add homework, that is 26,000 hours, from K-12, like homework, extracurricular activities. And they spend 29 hours doing their college application. Guys, how much time a reviewer is spending reviewing their application? You won't believe the number. 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, how much can you really write? If I only have 11 minutes to review a college application essay, of course, I'll be checking like GPA, the scores. There's no room for art, as you mentioned, all those really important outlets to cultivate our students' emotional being. Like 11 minutes to me is nothing. So I only checking boxes, but I feel the pain of those reviewers because they have like thousands of applications they need to review. It's a huge problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's a shame that they do that because I know you're very aware of what's happening in the future with that kind of AI bots, automation, and everyone that I see, whether it's like Elon Musk or Andrew Yang, is saying the soft skills are going to be important for the future. It's what makes you human, like what differentiates you from a robot, and that's empathy and emotional intelligence. And in fact, NASA, this guy did a test for NASA, and they were trying to work out where creativity comes from, and they wanted to find out how innovative, creative, and imaginative astronauts were, because if they're stuck on a space station, and they need to be thinking outside of the box. And this guy came up with this amazing test, and he gave it to 4 and 5-year-olds trying to work out where creativity came from. It was 1,600 kids, I think. 98% of them tested on the genius level of imagination, innovation, and creativity. 98%. They then go to school. By the time they're 10, it's down to 30%. By the time they're 15, it's down to 12%. And as adults, we're down to 2%. Creativity, innovation, and imagination are absolutely annihilated in our childhood. Now, whether that's purely education's fault or whether it's a combination of media or just society on a whole, but those skills are the ones we absolutely need, because also these teenagers, they're going to have a career in 2040, and they're still going to be younger than I am now. And 20 years ago, we couldn't have been doing this. We didn't have broadband, we didn't have social media, didn't have YouTube. So what are we going to have in 20 years? And how are we preparing our students for the skills to live in that world? Because an awful lot of stuff is going to go out of date fast. And I think they sense this. So even I was thinking this recently, in the UK, we tend to teach we teach French and Spanish as the main languages, maybe a bit of German. I have never seen any study that said that those should be the 2 languages they should learn. It's all like, which countries are going to be dominant in the future? China, India. How about they learn to speak those languages? And then they'll say, oh no, but those languages are hard. They're not for a 5-year-old. 5-year-old broke stuff up. Start it early.
It's so funny. I laugh because before I resigned from my job, I was actually, because I have such a passion for, I just love this comment from Michael. Thank you for joining us live. Talking about learning second language. I so agree. And so I was actually serving as the study abroad, like assistant or officer for quite a few semesters. And I I really advise quite a few students, and they all choose to study abroad in the UK, in Canada, in Australia. It's just like, to me, they're all very similar. I was like, how about in Japan? How about in China? How about in South Korea? It's like, no. That's like just like the fear. So I so agree with you. Yeah. That's a kind of good point. Yeah.
And that's what we should be focusing on. The whole hero's journey is a transformational process. And we look at like transformational leadership, but it also goes down to, there's a theory called Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. It's a triangle. And at the bottom, it's, do the students have their physiological needs met? So, have they slept? Are they eaten? Are they the right temperature? The theory being that it's hard to learn when you're uncomfortable in that way. Then it's your safety needs. So right now, there's no psychological safety. So it's why every survey in college is just like, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe? And then above that, it's family and friendships and connections. And COVID has impacted that as well.
Oh, totally. I mean, and just like the basic like physical needs. I went interviewed that high schoolers, and she told me like she only slept like maybe a few hours a day, and which is really common among her peers. And one thing I love about homeschooling is that our children can actually sleep in the morning. They go also, I was like surprised by how much sleep they actually need. Whereas before at 6 a.m., we literally had to drag them to get up in the morning. So yeah, that physical needs is so important. Yeah. So I know you also have a book on this topic. Oh, by the way, I just saw this come from Michael. Yeah, 26,000 hours like schooling, studying, and only 11 minutes. That is so, to me, that is a big red flag, showing the broken educational system. But anyway, so I'm going to share my screen. You actually have a book dedicated to this topic, and level up your teens. And so which actually get great reviews. And you published this book on your 40th birthday, so which is really fascinating. So share with us what inspired you to write this book. Who is this book for? Kind of give us an overview of the book.
Sure. I think during that period of where I was depressed, I was going on this process of self-development, and I started using Snapchat, as you know, because I felt like as a media lecturer, I needed to stay up to date with the world that my students were living in. And I came across some amazing people, and I started reading. I came across Forbes. I hadn't really read that before, and started to see different ways of seeing the world. And as part of that, I started writing articles sharing my story about mental health. So I started to identify as being a writer. Then one day, one of my students said, there should be one of you in every classroom. And I was like, that's a nice thought. And the only way I can do that is by writing a book. I also think, again, hero's journey stuff. If you've been on a quest and you've been beaten down by life, there's always a bit in the hero's journey called the belly of the whale. It's like where you're at your absolute worst. It's where you kind of transform and kind of level up and grow. If you've done that and you got to the cave and you've killed the dragon or got past the dragon, you have an absolute responsibility to the ecosystem, to the community, to go back and share what you've learned. Because the way you frame it, the stories you tell will be unique to you, and somebody will resonate with the way you talk about it than the next person. Because that's what we always do, right? Why write an article? Someone else has covered that topic. Why do a podcast? There's so many educational podcasts. Why write a book? There's so many books on teenage mental health. And I say, no, this is going to be my one. So I set that date. I was like, if I don't have a deadline, I'm not going to do it. Threw it together, and it's basically the stuff I've said. It talks about the hero's journey. It's about how to kind of weaponize your imagination, and I see it as a guidebook because I think if teenagers are struggling with mental health, it can be really hard to be motivated to read. And I read a great book by Matt Haig called Reasons to Stay Alive when I was ill, and some of the chapters were just like 10 bullet points. It's just like, here's 10 things you can do. And I love that level of freedom and the level of white space. So it's less than 100 pages. And at the end, it's like, okay, now you're on the quest. Here's a link to Simon Sinek's like TED Talk. Here's a link to Ken Robinson. Here's the book, The Chimp Paradox, that you should go read. Like, you've started your journey. Now you're on your own, but there's other mentors on the path. So it's a quick read, short chapters, but the feedback from teenagers and adults has been really good. It is predominantly aimed at teenagers, but at the same time, there's a teenager within all of us. So a lot of adults said they found it quite helpful.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so do you mind sharing some, I know like even before we went live, you shared that you were actually adding some like exercises into your own classes to really help our teens or students level up. So do you mind sharing some specific, because we have quite a few parents here that we can actually apply, especially for people who have kind of 12 years old age teens, and give us some really practical tips that we can apply right away.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is just being aware of what's going on in the room. So, and that sounds dumb, but that's continuously catching their language all the time, because they will create, we create our own prisons. So they might say, oh, there's no jobs out there. Well, that's a lie. So I'd catch it. If you put it like this, they watch for when people are generalizing, distorting, or deleting, because you want to help them get a clear view of what reality actually is. So they might say, oh, I always mess up presentations. Maybe, well, okay, can you think of a time when you didn't mess up a presentation? No, I can't. So then you work with it, and they probably can. I bet when they were 6, standing on the sofa, giving an impassioned song from Frozen to their parents, it was great. So it's just reminding them that at some point they were great. And I like doing that. I like, because then you can anchor it to a positive experience. So think of a time when you weren't nervous. Think of a time when you were really comfortable in yourself. Think of a time when everything went your way and you were just content. What was it about that moment that enabled you to do that? Because you can do it. You did. You had that excellence inside you. You were in like flow state right then. Let's now replicate it. So that's one. The other thing is I tend to drop in breathing techniques, and there's a million, but things like box breathing, slowing them down, breathing. I also start to embed sometimes meditation. I certainly guide them towards it. But I think one of the main things I do is really create a safe space for them to fail. It's hard as a teacher because my ego is my knowledge and I want to impart it. So they'll say, oh, how do I do this? I don't know. Go find out. But I'm not sure what to do. Great, go fail. It's okay to fail. I'm going to catch you. It's okay. I'll help you. But I want you to fail, because you're only going to be successful in life if you're willing to do things that you might fail at. That's how you're going to grow. So, but there really are so many, but I like those ones. Watching their language, helping them get mindful of their thoughts. I do this weaponize your imagination thing with them. And it's just asking those kind of questions. Like, what would need to be true for you to be successful? But it is creating that space. So they say, oh, I can't afford to move out. Okay.
Yeah.
How to move out? Oh,
yeah. I know. You have like lots of great tips already. Gayatri, she said that I love a safe space to fail. I so agree. And just last night, and my 9 years old, and I told him, let's reach an agreement that we no longer use mistake in the house. We treat every mistake as a learning lesson. I told him the only mistake is one that you haven't learned anything from, right? So if you actually learn something from this mistake, it's not a mistake, it's a learning lesson. It is so important that we really pay very close attention to the language that we're using, because what I noticed that was my 9 years old, as his cognitive, ability started to develop, he started to lie, right, about this, wanted to do the computer, didn't really tell us. And I was starting to say, don't be a liar. And then he started to pick that up as an identity. He said, Mom, I'm just a liar. That's what I do. I said, then I immediately, I had to switch. I noticed how my language is literally giving him an identity. I was like, no, let's say that I'm an honest person, because if you see yourself as a liar, what do? You lie. But if you see yourself as an honest person, what do? You tell the truth. So it is so important, like really watch our language and how we are communicating those things to our children. So powerful. Like every day I have to really, awareness in myself. How am I talking, right? Now just like everything that I want to say just come out, actually have some self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also an element of, as long as, because I'm kind of, I do things like this, they know that I'm fairly up to date with what's going on, and I have blind spots, but I deal with them. But another thing you can do, particularly in the arts, is I just have an understanding of creativity, right? And so creativity is really hard to do on demand. Like, so if they stop working and start chatting to each other, I allow space for that, particularly in a pandemic, because that might be the only time they see each other that week. And I want them to bond because that helps them. And because we all know this, right? Creativity, something can occur to you because of just an informal conversation, or it occurs to you on a run, or it occurs to you into the shower. I can remember a time when I was at school, and it was an English class, I should have been writing a story. And I just leaned back like this and looked out the window. Like, literally, in my memory, it's like 5 seconds. And the tutor was like, Darren, what are you doing? I said, I'm just thinking about what to write. And he said, well, don't, just write it down. I'm like, that's not how creativity works. So I do the same with my students. Like, as long as they do the work at some point, I just create a space and just be like, you know, if you can be, if you're struggling, just doodle. If you want, just do something else. And the idea will come. They're motivated to do the course because they enjoy it. So, but I don't think we give enough. In fact, weirdly, the answer to the genius category of imagination and NASA is more daydreaming. More daydreaming, more meditation, more mindfulness, just letting almost like your brain's program without your ego kind of getting in the way, just work things out on its own. Just silly tasks like, here's a fork. How can we make this fork better? Mm-hmm. And I love that. It's critical thinking and kind of problem solving. Just, well, what would happen if we did it this way? What would happen if we tried this? And I did this recently with my students. I said, okay, the way we do the small things is the way we do the big things. So I'm going to put on my coat like this. I put on my coat. I said, how did I put that on? And they broke it down. They were like, well, you kind of swept it around you a bit. It was like a cloak. I said, yeah, because in my head, I think I'm this character from a show called Angel, and I romanticize it. But then I went into every single thing about it and how it was representing my personality. So, and obviously we could apply it to film. So it was, how does that apply to your character? And it had all these things embedded into it. But then I thought, well, how else could I put on my coat? Because they're like, you're just putting on a coat. I was like, there's so many different ways. Mm. My daughter does that weird thing, she's 4, where like the arms go in at the front and then it kind of flips back over their head. And I was like, wow, why does she do it that way? And why do I do it this way? And I think she does it that way because she's 4 years old and she looks for joy and happiness in every single moment. And at 43 years old, I've stopped doing that. So I want to put my coat on in a way that allows me to experience joy and happiness. That's how I want to brush my teeth. That's how I want to tie my shoelaces. In every moment, I want to look for those moments where I can maybe improve something or do something in a funny way and maybe make a breakthrough.
Yeah. So true. And it's such a great way to ask yourself, what if we do this differently to really like practice their creativity muscle. It is so interesting. I read a NASA study you mentioned. So they were actually asking paperclip, how many ways can you use paperclip? Right. Yeah. So it's so sad to see how the number dropped, right? You mentioned from 98%, the genius, like 4 or 5 years old. I'm just looking at my own kids. They're drawing people like 8 arms and all those things slowly to like the standard, the right way to do things. And they lose that imagination over time for sure as they become more educated. So another point you mentioned, I think is really powerful because many of our children will say things like, I'm not good at this, right? But I love how you said that, are there times that you are actually good at something? It's so powerful to show them because psychology-wise, we all have this negative selection bias, right? Good things happen to us, we don't remember, but bad things happen, oh my God, they haunt us for years. So as parents, I think it's good that we actually remind our students and our children. So well, my older son, 9 years old, he actually showed me, he said, Mommy, every time when you like point out the problem in me that I need to work on, can you also say something positive about me? I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. So we actually started practicing that, right? This is good, but even though you lied to us, this is really bad. But on the other hand, you were quite creative with the plot that you came up with. So try to kind of see the other side. So I love that's such a great tip that you mentioned. Yeah. So in terms of breathing, do you have any specific like apps that you use or teachers that you follow, like meditation that you can share with us?
Meditation, I got to the point where I just kind of close my eyes and watch the back of my eyelid, and I make shapes out of the darkness, and I'm curious as to what comes up. I also, because it's leadership, I'm really interested in blind spots. And again, our students have blind spots because they think that their world is the world. So they don't know, but I didn't know about digital nomads until I came across Erica Blair, who I think you know as well. And I was like, wait, there's a thing called digital nomads. Our students can find a way to make money on a laptop and go live on a beach in Thailand for a couple of years. That's amazing. So, but there are apps out there. I think there's one called Headspace. I tend to also use YouTube videos a lot. In terms of apps, I don't use that many. It's I do think of myself, I like this persona where all I need is myself, and I'm on my own. And I can, in my mind, I can create any reality. So, but that's an imagination thing. So there are tools you can use to help you increase your imagination. So for my daughter, there's a thing called story cubes. And they've got icons on, there's different themes. And you roll, so they're dice. So they roll the dice, and then you've got to make up a story with the images. Like, so there might be a dragon and a castle and a flower. And then you start putting the story together. That's really good for imagination. For blind spots, I do get quite like woo-woo sometimes in terms of, because it is interesting to me that my thoughts can impact my reality. So I'll do like a tarot card word of the day. And so tarot cards can be quite shady when they want to be. So for example, it might say, oh, you've got insomnia, nightmares, and depression coming up. Now, I don't know if I'm connecting to the universe in some kind of way, but I'm curious, or is it just a way for me to think about something new that day? So when that happens, when I get that card, I immediately check my kind of psychic or psychological boundaries. It's like, where am I under threat of well-being right now? Am I being consistent with my well-being habits? Same thing, it might be today you're going to find love. So all of a sudden, I'm now looking for opportunities. And I think tarot cards are good in that way, and so are dreams. Because again, you want to be, how imaginative are your dreams? Like if you can just get into the habit of remembering them. And how many times have you heard a singer or an artist be like, oh, I just dreamt it. I just dreamt that song. I woke up and I had it. Oh, I just dreamt that image and I woke up and I had it. Like paying attention to our dreams is you talking to your subconscious.
Totally. Reminds me of who is that artist will actually put a pencil between his legs. And then like when the pencil or pen actually drops, he actually wakes up from his dream and then has some brilliant idea and then started drawing or something. I heard that story. See, like kind of in that dream state, and then like intentionally put a pencil between the two legs and like allow creative ideas to flow. I was like, that's so brilliant. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So here's a really good comment from Josiah. Thank you for joining us live from Nigeria. I think I read it. And so your identity is easily shaped by what sticks to their memory, right? Especially for children from neuroscience, right? Before 8 or 9 years old, whatever our teachers are telling or parents are telling our children, they take that in as fact. And so I feel like even for me, I had lots of labels that I had to unprocess, get rid of, that's no longer my identity. Can be really hard. So here's a great comment. So those, how would you improve these form questions are what employers use to test the creative abilities of prospective employees. It's remarkable how ingrained our thought patterns become. So true, right? Yeah.
And it's tough to get the self-awareness to be able to challenge it, because we all live in a different reality in our mind. It can be a real struggle. And as parents, kind of what we're talking about is, it sucks, but we need to do the work on ourselves, and we need to model that behavior consistently. Like the way you pay the waiter, the way you let people out into traffic. Like our kids are watching all the time. Oh, that's how a man should treat a woman. Oh, that's how you treat a pet or whatever it is. You got to watch yourself all the time. And also the scary thing is that when they go to school, my daughter's teachers now have more influence over her than I do. They see her more than I do. And you've got to choose your school so carefully. And she came home one day and she was like, she's 4. She was like, I'm a big girl now, so I won't cry. I was like, whoa, what? Where did that come from? And then, so, put on Frozen. I start crying because, I cry at movies all the time these days. I was like, it's okay to cry. Guys can cry too. You're allowed to cry when you're sad. And we talk about big emotions and and to breathe and all the stuff like you need. I'm hoping I can embed in her at an early age, and she knows it. Like I did a thing the other day, which I think she was 3. She had this really big angry emotion. I was like, wow, that's a really big emotion you've got. I think that's called anger. Whereabouts is it? And she was like, no, I said, what color is it? She was like, it's red. I was like, okay. And whereabouts is it? And she pointed at her knee. I was like, okay, should we take it out? And she kind of took it out of her knee. It's imaginary, of course, but the imagination, just because it's in your head doesn't mean it's not real, as Dumbledore says. And she went and popped it in the bin. Then later that day, she got herself worked up, paused, took out the anger or the frustration and popped it in the bin. And it's a fine line. Like I need to manage, it's okay to have these emotions, to the, have you felt this emotion long enough? Is it time to put that emotion away?
Exactly. It's such a good point. I mean, it's totally, I feel like every parent should like unschool their children a little bit when they come back home, right? To unprocess what they learned from their teachers. I remember this conversation so clearly. There was a dad interested in my program. I had a conversation and they started homeschooling their children. I was like, what triggered you to homeschool your kids? And he told me when they noticed they're 4 years old, started to ask the parents, can they draw a specific color or can they like have the color outside the lines on their coloring book? And that was such a wake-up call for the parents that, oh my God, this is coloring book. My daughter, 4 years already being confined by so many rules. So it's really, really interesting that I think also our responsibility as a good parent or educator to open up, to deconstruct those limiting beliefs that are, like, as Josiah mentioned, like labeling us, confining us, like constructing us. Yeah.
As parents, we can model getting it wrong. Like it became a joke in our house because I would purposely get things wrong to make it normalize it if we get frustrated. It then became a whole thing where it was like, my daughter was like, Daddy gets it wrong all the time. Daddy's so silly. Mommy and Evie get it right. And I was like, okay, I've got far with this. I'm going to get it right for a little bit to show it's okay.
Totally, like normalize mistakes, right? Normalize mistakes and failures. Yeah. So it's such a great conversation, but I want to respect everyone's time. And I can't let you go without talking about social media. For one reason, that's how you and I connected a few years ago through Snapchat. I was like, wow, this amazing teacher. And your story actually went viral, right? Like, using Snapchat, all those things. So please do share with us, because that is a big concern among many, many parents, right? Like social media, what to do. Everyone think this thing is so bad. I have my perspective, and do share with us what you think about social media, like TikTok, or the different tools, and how do you think especially teenagers, how should they approach social media?
I saw a study today in Science Daily that said kids using technology loads in their youth doesn't really impact their adulthood. It's not really doing any long-term damage. As far as social media goes, it's I've got to be careful saying this. Ideally, social media should be taught at a very early age. If your kid does not have resilience and emotional intelligence, then the social media world is actually kind of problematic. But if you have resilience and emotional intelligence, it's actually wonderful. You can connect to people all around the world. You can connect to support groups. You can find your tribe. You can find like-minded people who can support you. But there needs to be that education around, the dopamine hits and turning off notifications. But that's growing. But at the same time, again, one of the well-being hacks I use, in fact, I just did it recently, is there's a woman on TikTok called Dr. Julie somebody, and she's a psychologist. And what I love about her is she's like, well, I'm a psychologist. Kids are in pain. Where are they? Where's their attention? Oh, it's on TikTok. I'm going to go to TikTok to engage with them and just give them little tips like, this is called imposter syndrome, or this is what happens when your thoughts do this. These are strategies to deal with it. So I think social media, like anything new, offends the generation before it. So the same way rock and roll music terrified the generation before it, in the same way comics terrified the generation before it, social media just terrifies the generation before it. I don't understand it, so it must be bad. It isn't. You should learn to understand. And TikTok I love, because there's these young people on there who are They're educating people about their lives. There's a blind teenager who's like, this is how I do makeup. There's an autistic teenager who's like, this is what autism is.
I saw her speak. I think at like a big conference. Yeah, but sorry to interrupt you. I love her story.
So there's all these wonderful, and what I like is when they're producing content, they're getting used to how they look. They're getting used to the sound of their voice. They're very into their bodies in terms of dancing. And those skills, in order to talk at a screen, is going to be vital for 2025, 2030. And we're seeing it now, even with educators. Like, oh, I don't want to go on Teams. Like, I don't like the way my voice looks. I don't like the way I look. It's like, you're 43. What's going on? So I love the fact that they're dealing with that, and it has, I think, made them one of the most accepting generations. They seem to be accepting everyone because they're seeing like the idea of the other. They're seeing people from different cultures. They're seeing people from different countries and socioeconomic groups. They're becoming much more aware. So I know it gets a kick in, and it's often blamed, oh, it's social media's fault. Way more complex than that. It's like,
oh my God. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I got so tired of the discourse that social media is the root of all evil. I think social media is like everything else, right? It's not. Social media itself is not going to break a person or save a person, but actually we need to educate our children how to use it in a very critical, responsible manner. But the education part, I think, is so amazing. Your students are so lucky to have a teacher like you. Like most teachers that I know, they just don't use social media at all. Just like stay away from that thing, right? But just like you're not helping the next generation at all. Yeah. So
I've had this for years over media, like parents being like, oh, but is there any money in media? What kind of job would he get? And media seen as a soft subject or like an add-on subject. It's like we are like goldfish swimming in water, but the water is media. Media should be taught from 5 years old. Like, this is what an image is. This is what the meaning is. This is the impact it's having. This is audience theory. This is how to protect yourself from this. Again, it could be a force for good. It could be a force for bad. But as I said at the beginning, media is weaponized to hurt our children. We need to be educating people, the kids from 5 years old, and parents need to be getting up to date with it and really watching what their kids are watching. But at the same time, don't assume that you know what the impact is. So,
100%.
So like they might be watching a film that you think is problematic, but they might be seeing. We all watch the same movies, but we see something different. So it's about unpacking it. So I'll do that with my daughter, because some of the Disney movies are crazy. Frozen 2 has got some dark stuff in it. So we unpack it and we say, okay, how do you think Anya was feeling then? What do you think she should have done? And you've just got to involve yourself in your kid's narrative.
Totally. I mean, we have students at Classroom we coach them how to launch a live streaming podcast, and they all found jobs. I mean, because so few students are doing that. Yeah, exactly. So I love this comment from Phil, right? Kind of what you mentioned, Darren, because this is so new. And in my generation, I think we're the same generation. In our generation, there was definitely, we didn't really grow up with like technology, social media. I think that's why it's even harder to be a parent nowadays, because we have to be constantly learning, educating ourselves regarding what is there, because our children are using this anyway, regardless of our agreement or not. And so many great comments here from Michael again, like the pencil with the rubber on the top, in case you missed a mistake. But it's so funny. I want to share this comment because a few months ago, I had a conversation with a high school teacher, and she said that her students are so afraid to make a mistake, and they can only use the pencil with the rubber on the top. But if the pencil doesn't have the eraser, they refuse to use. They refuse to write down the answer. They refuse because they're so afraid of making a mistake. I was like, wow, that's crazy. But anyway, so what a great conversation, my friend. So share with us, where can people learn more about you and get a copy of your book and all the other good stuff? And social media, yes, of course, right?
My social media is the Darren Horne on everything. I don't use Snapchat that much, but it's there. I'm on TikTok a little bit, and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and probably any other new one. I tend to go make sure my username is on it. My book, Level Up Your Teens, is on all the different Amazons. It's Barnes and Noble, and it'll be, you can probably order it from any good bookstore. If you do get it, I really would appreciate it if you leave a review, and I do read all of them. And but yeah, it would be much.
Some really amazing reviews there, my friend. Congratulations! Yeah,
I won 2 awards as well. It was a runner-up in one, but it's a it's an award-winning book.
Congratulations!
That's another thing that we don't do with our teenagers. We're not allowed to brag, right? We're not allowed to say how good we are at something. We've got to all be like, and some teenagers will deliberately do worse because they don't want to stick their head above the rest.
They all stand out. Oh, yes, yeah.
So yeah, I'm an award-winning filmmaker and an award-winning writer. It feels like ego, right? It feels like ego.
Oh, thank you so much for such a enlightening conversation. And I really appreciate your time, 5 p.m. in the UK. And thank you so much, everyone in the live audience, for joining us live. I think next Friday, I have my dear friend from Adobe. She has an incredible journey, and to join us live to share her journey, like growing up in a very tough childhood situation to become a really big influencer working at Adobe. So incredible journey. I hope you guys can join us live. And definitely check out Darren, his book and the work, his website, and different places. Connect with him on social media. And my dear viewers, thank you so much again for spending 1 hour with us. That's absolutely incredible. And enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your weekend. And I hope to see you again next Friday or Saturday, same time, same location. Bye, everyone.
See you later.